Erev Tov, everyone. Erev Tov. It is Monday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the Maimon Beit Knesset, therefore it must be Zeyde Story Corner. Of course, Zeyde Story Corner. And we're going to continue, pick up where we left off last week. You're left with the cliffhanger. Yeah, yeah, left with the cliffhanger. So, So, anything interesting going on? Not really. It's just been raining too much. Yeah, I know. It's been raining. We've had more rain than we've had actual sunny days. But rain is good. Rain is good. So, anyway, I guess we should get on with the story time, shouldn't we? Yes, we should. Okay. Let me get you on your camera. There we are. That's the old camera stand. Yes, it is the old camera stand. Couldn't make up your mind? Well, I can make up my mind. It's just that I wanted to see which one actually was working better, and the other one just took up too much room and was not actually doing what I wanted it to. And I see we have a new backdrop too. Yeah. To cover up some of the collectibles. Yeah, my collectibles, my Looney Tunes collection, my baseball collection, and so on and so forth. That was on the back wall. It was a little bit distracting, and so we've in between time, we put up a little buffer there, so it wouldn't take up. Wouldn't distract people from, of course, from the star. Well, thank you very much. Okay, so anyway, let's, shall we check and see who's in the chat room? Let's do that. Okay, we have Donald, and we have Nora, and Chrissy, and we have Marshall, and Regina, and Adrian. And who else do we have? We have Simcha, and Duran, and Yehuda, and more watching in the background who can't get into the chat room because YouTube doesn't allow them to get in the chat room on their phone or in their tablet. So anyway, we know they're there. We get the count. We don't know who you are, but we know there are people there. Okay, so should we get on with the story? Yeah, we probably should get on with the story. I'm sure everybody is waiting to find out what's happened to Tom since we kind of left him there last week. So I go back a little bit, and then I'll read just to remind you where we were when we left off, okay? Okay, so Marilyn has joined us. Good to see you. Okay. So, it is, now do you remember Tom? He was the poor boy, and that Mazel said that he was going to give him good fortune, and for an entire year. And then Shlemazel would come along, and he said that he could reverse everything in 1 second. So, we are into the process where Muzzle is with Tom, and things are going pretty good, actually. So, here we go. It is known that the greater man becomes, the more powerful are his enemies. Prime Minister Kamstan, who wanted the throne, intrigued against Tom. He and his henchmen spread the word that Tom was a sorcerer. How else could a lowly peasant have managed to succeed where the lords had failed? They said Tom had sold his soul to the devil. When that year Night after night, a strange comet with a long tail was seen in the sky. Tom's enemies insisted that it was an omen that Tom would bring misfortune on the king and lead the country to ruin. And here's where we pick up this week. Shlomazel had promised Mazel to leave Tom in peace for a full year. But this did not prevent him from quietly preparing a trap for Tom the moment the time was up. Shlomazel could not wait to win his bet and get hold of the barrel of wine of forgetfulness. It was known that one sip of this wine gave more enjoyment than all the other pleasurable things on earth. We should get some of that wine. Yeah, we sure should. We may want to change that before the end of the story. We shall see. Sounds good, though. Yeah, I know, it does sound good. Okay, anyway. Shlomazel had, for ages, been suffering from sleeplessness and nightmares. He knew that the wine of forgetfulness would bring him sleep and sweet dreams of silver seas, golden rivers, gardens of crystal trees, and women of heavenly beauty. He also wanted to show his followers, the demons, goblins, hobgoblins, imps, and other evil spirits, that he was more powerful than Mazel and could outwit him. Suddenly, the king became ill. There were great doctors in the court, but they could not discover what was wrong with him. At last, after long consultation, they decided that the king suffered from a rare disease from which the only cure was the milk of a lioness. Did you know that? Yeah, I read the story. You read the story too. I know, it's weird. Anyway, the milk of a lioness. Okay, well, that's what it says. Okay. There was a zoo in the capital, but at the moment it had no lioness with nursing cubs. The king's faith in Tom was so great that he sent for him and asked him to fetch the milk of a lioness. Anyone else in Tom's place would have been frightened out of his wits on hearing such a request. Since Mazel stood behind him, Tom replied simply, "Yes, my king, I will find the lioness, milk her, and bring her milk to you." I sure hope he asked first. Okay, well, let's just get on with the story, can we? It bothers me. Okay, we get it. The king was touched by Tom's brave reply, and he called out his courtiers, "You are my witnesses. The day Tom returns with the milk of the lioness, I will give him the hand of my daughter in marriage." Prime Minister Constant, standing among the courtiers, could contain himself no longer. "Your Majesty," he said, "no man can milk a lioness and live. Tom has made a promise that he cannot keep. And if he does bring milk, what guarantee is there that it will really be a lioness's milk?" added one of Constant's followers. "Your Majesty, I will find a lioness and milk her, Tom repeated with confidence. Go, and success be with you, the king said. But I warn you, do not fool me by bringing me the milk of any other animal. If I deceive your majesty, I will deserve to die, Tom replied. Everyone expected that Tom would arm himself with weapons and a net with which to ensnare the beast, or perhaps take along herbs with which to put the lioness to sleep. They could not believe he would travel without servants to help him. But he left alone and unarmed, riding on his horse and carrying only a stone jug for the milk. When the courtiers saw this, even those who had confidence in Tom began to doubt. He had departed in such haste that he had not even stopped to bid farewell to anxious Nesika. Tom's friends immediately spread the rumor that Tom had been so frightened by the difficult mission gave him by the king that he simply ran away. All the king's men agreed that no lioness would let herself be milked by a human. Of course, what nobody knew was that Mazel cantered along beside Tom. Tom had hardly ridden an hour's time when, on a low hill, he saw a large lioness. Her two cubs were standing nearby. With the courage of those who are protected by muzzle, Tom approached the lioness, knelt down, and began to milk her as if she were a cow. Now that is a bit insulting. I tell you, calling a lioness a cow. My goodness. It's just a story. Will you please calm down? I know it's just a story, but the thought of it, it's the principle of the thing. Okay. You got your principles okay now? Yes, okay, I'm ready to go on. Okay. He filled the jug with the lioness' warm milk, sealed it, carefully rose, patted her on the head. Only then did the lioness seem to realize what had happened. Her yellow eyes seemed to say, "What have I permitted? Have I forgotten that I am queen of all the beasts? Where is my pride, my dignity?" And suddenly she let out a terrible roar. Luckily, Tom had already mounted his horse, for he bolted in fear and raced away in the direction of the capital. When Tom returned so soon, everyone was convinced that the milk he brought back could not be that of a lioness. Lions live in the desert. Well, some of us live in the desert, that is. Anyway, lions live in the desert, in a part of the kingdom that lay weeks away from the capital. It was clear to all that Tom intended to deceive the sick king, so that when the king died, Tom would rule through Nesika. The king himself was suspicious as the rest. Nevertheless, he summoned Tom to appear before him. Tom entered the royal chamber carrying the jug of milk in both hands. Kneeling before the king, he said, "Your Majesty, I have brought what you sent me for, the milk of a dog." A dead silence followed his words. The king's eyes filled with anger. "You dare laugh at my misfortune? Milk of a dog have you brought me? You will pay with this for your life." Why had Tom said that he had brought the milk of a dog? Well, it so happened that very second that Tom approached the king's sick bed, Mazel's year had come to an end, and Shlemazel had taken his place. It was Shlemazel who made Tom say dog instead of lioness. Shlemazel had indeed, in 1 second, destroyed what had taken Mazel a year to do. And as had been agreed between them, Shlemazel had not used any of his old tricks. Tom tried to correct his mistake, but his voice had gone with his luck, and he stood there speechless. At the king's signal, Kamstan ordered 2 guards to seize Tom and place him in chains. They brought him to the dungeon where those condemned to death were kept. When Nesika heard what had happened, she fell into despair. She ran to her father's chamber and begged him to save Tom. For the first time, the sick king refused to permit her into his presence. That night, the palace, indeed the whole capital, was dark and quiet. Only Kamsam and his henchmen secretly celebrated Tom's downfall. They knew the king would soon die, and since Neseka was unmarried, Kamstan would inherit the kingdom. The prime minister offered his guest bread and beer. Miser that he was, it was his custom to make his guests pay for their food and drink. But on this occasion, however, he charged them only for their beer. Oh, what a nice guy, huh? What a sweetheart of a guy, huh? Okay, anyway. And in the deepest cellar of the palace, which was known to be haunted, Mazel and Shlemazel held their meeting. Shlemazel had expected Mazel to look disappointed and angry, as do those who have lost a bet. But Mazel was not a sore loser. As usual, he was calm and composed. "Shlemazel, you've won, and I congratulate you," he said. "Do you realize that your lucky Tom will be hanged at dawn?" Shlemazel asked. "Yes, I do." "Have you forgotten my wine of forgetfulness?" "No, I haven't." Mazel went out and soon returned, rolling a barrel covered with dust and cobwebs. He sat it upright, handed Shlemazel a goblet, and said, "Drink, Shlemazel, as much as your heart desires." Shlomazel placed his goblet under the spigot, filled it, and drank greedily. A broad smirk spread over his devilish face. For one who is the master of the unlucky, he grinned, I sure am lucky. He took another long drink and began to sound tipsy. He said, Listen to me, Muzzle. Instead of fighting me, why don't you join me? Together, we'd make a great team. You mean together we could ruin the world, Muzzle said. Absolutely. And what then? After a while, we'd have nothing left to do. As long as we can drink wine of forgetfulness, why worry? We get wine, someone has to plant a vineyard, Muzzle reminded him. Someone has to pick the grapes, press them, and prepare the wine. Nothing produces nothing, not even the wine of forgetfulness. If this wine works, I don't care about the future. It will work soon, Muzzle said. Drink and forget yourself. Have a drink too, Muzzle, my friend. No, Shlomazel, forgetfulness is not for me. Shlomazel drank one goblet after another. His wrinkled face half laughed, half cried, and he began to speak about himself in the way that drunkards sometimes do. I wasn't born Shlomazel, he said. My father was poor, but he was a good spirit. He was a water carrier in paradise. My mother was a servant of a saint. My parents sent me to Rev Zevel's school. They wanted me to become a seraph, or at least an angel. But I hated my parents because they forced me to study. To spite them, I joined the gang of imps. We did all kinds of mischief. We stole manna. We stuffed ourselves with pilfered stardust, moon milk, other forbidden delicacies. At night we descended to earth, got into stables and frightened horses. We broke into larders and left devil's dung in the food. We disguised ourselves as wolves and chased sheep. Ha! What did we do? Once I turned myself into a frog and hid in Reb Zeinvel's snuff box. When he opened it to take a pinch, I jumped out and bit his nose. I rose slowly and steadily in the ranks of the evil host until I became what I am today. Shlomazel, master of bad luck. Shlomazel filled another goblet and began to sing in a hoarse voice. You may plot and you may scheme. Mazel is an empty dream. Now Shlomazel takes over. Tom will never be in clover. Mazel talks, Shlomazel acts, turning curses into facts. Muzzle wins a round or two. Shlomazel sees the battle through. On Mazel no one can depend. Shlomazel's victory in the end. Shlomazel uttered a snort and fell down like a log. That was what Mazel had been waiting for. There was little time, because dawn was approaching, and in the palace courtyard The dignitaries were already gathering for Tom's hanging. The guards appeared with Tom in chains. Kamstam, surrounded by his flatterers, was conspicuous among the lords. He had already taken bribes and promises, the highest positions to those who paid the most. At a signal from Kamstam, the drummers began their drumming. The masked executioner, dressed half in red and half in black, prepared to place the noose around Tom's neck. At that moment, Muzzle appeared. No one saw him, but everyone felt his presence. The sun suddenly rose and covered everything with a purple light. Now that Shlemazel lay in a drunken stupor, and Mazel stood near the prisoner, Tom was again filled with courage. He called out in a clear voice, "My lords, it is the custom before the condemned dies to give him one last wish. My wish is to see the king." The drummers, in confusion, interrupted their drumming. Though Kamstam protested, the other lords overruled him and commanded that Tom be led to the king, who lay on his sickbed. Tom knelt before the king and spoke, "Your Majesty, allow me to explain why I said that I had brought you the milk of a dog. It is known that the lion is the king of the animals. You know that. That is correct." Can we stop with the comments and just go on with the story? I mean, it needs to be said. Okay, you said it. Can we go on? Yeah, okay, we can go on. It is known that the lion is the king of the animals. You got that right too, buddy. All right. Go on with the story. All right. Don't be so pushy. Yet, in comparison with you, my lord, a lion is no more than a dog. And so, I called the lioness a dog, as an expression of my respect and admiration for your Majesty. I did bring you the milk of a lioness. I beg you, drink it, and it will make you well. I swear on my love for Nesicha that I am telling the truth." Since Mazel again stood at Tom's side, the king believed Tom. "But the milk has been poured out," Kamstan interrupted. Nesicha, who had not slept all night, praying and hoping that Tom would somehow be saved, had heard what had taken place and had rushed to her father's room. When Kamstam said that the milk had been thrown away, she cried, "No! Kamstam, I have kept it. I requested the servants to give it to me because I believed in Tom." She herself ran to bring the milk to her father. The amazement of all present grew as they watched the king drink the milk to the last drop. It worked so quickly that he became well before their very eyes. His cheeks lost their pallor. His dim eyes regained their former brightness, and his strength returned. The entire court rejoiced, except, naturally, Kamstan and those whom he had sold high positions to in the kingdom. Nesicha was the happiest of all. She fell at her father's feet and said, "Father, Tom has saved your life." Every word he spoke was true. Now, keep your promise, and let us be married." The king immediately ordered that the wedding fit for the future queen be prepared. Royalty and dignitaries were invited from all surrounding countries. Kings, queens, princes, and princesses came to the wedding accompanied by their royal entourages. They brought the most precious gifts. Nesika was a splendid sight in her wedding dress, which had a train 10 yards long and was carried by 20 pages. On her head she wore a dazzling coronet set with the diamond image of a lioness. On his uniform, Tom wore the Order of Selfless Devotion, the country's highest honor. Tom and Nesika were the happiest couple in the land. Nesika bore her husband 7 children, 4 princes and 3 princesses, all handsome, healthy, and courageous. Nobody lives forever. A day came when the king died. Nesika became queen, and Tom her prince consort. Nesika never decided any matters of state without the advice of her husband, because whatever Tom concerned himself with turned out well. As for Tom, he felt so sorry for himself that he took to drinking. Since he remained stingy as ever, he spent his time hanging around taverns, waiting for someone to treat him. Those who had once flattered him were the first to turn away. Even though, after some time, Schlemazel awoke from his sleep, he never went near Tom again. For such was the power of the wine of forgetfulness that Schlemazel didn't even remember that Tom existed. As Schlemazel had always been fond of drink and drunkards, he now attached himself to Kamstan. Mazel, of course, continued to help Tom. Actually, Tom no longer needed Mazel, except once in a while. Tom had learned that good luck follows those who are diligent, honest, sincere, and helpful to others. The man who has these qualities is indeed lucky forever. And that is the end of the story. What a wonderful story. I'll tell you, it's a good one. Okay. So, we are at our halfway point. We are going to take a quick 6-minute break, and then we'll be back and we'll go on to the next story, which is called Why Noah Chose the Dove. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. Okay, just as promised. Okay. So, now we go on to our next story, which is called, again, Why Noach Chose the Dove. When the people sinned and God decided to punish them by sending the flood, all the animals gathered around Noach's ark. Noach was a righteous man, and God had told him how to save himself and his family by building an ark that would float and shelter them when the waters rose. The animals had heard the rumor that Noach was to take with him on the ark only the best of all living creatures. So the animals came and vied with one another, each boasting about its own virtues and, whenever possible, belittling the merits of others. The lion roared, "I am the strongest of all the beasts, and I surely must be saved." Hard to argue with that, isn't it? All right. The elephant blared, "I am the largest. I have the longest trunk and the biggest ears and the heaviest feet." To be big and heavy is not so important, yapped the fox. I, the fox, am the cleverest of all. What about me, brayed the donkey? I thought I was the cleverest. It seems anyone can be clever, yipped the skunk. I smell the best of all the animals. My perfume is famous. Oh, yeah, you got that right. It's famous, all right. Okay, anyway. All of you scramble over the earth, but I'm the only one that can climb trees, shrieked the monkey. The only one, growled the bear. What do you think I do? And how about me, chattered the squirrel indignantly. I belong to the tiger family, purred the cat. I'm a cousin of the elephant, squeaked the mouse. I'm just as strong as the lion, snarled the tiger, and I have the most beautiful fur. My spots are more admired than your stripes, the leopard spat back. I am man's closest friend, yelped the dog. You're no friend. You're just a fawning flatterer, bayed the wolf. I am proud. I'm a lone wolf and flatter no one. Ah, bladed the sheep. That's why you're always hungry. Give nothing, get nothing. I give man wool, and he takes care of me. You give man wool, but I give him sweet honey, droned the bee. Besides, I have venom to protect me from my enemies. What is your venom compared to mine, rattled the snake, and I am closer to Mother Earth than any of you. Not as close as I am, protested the earthworm, sticking his head out of the ground. I lay eggs, clucked the hen. I give milk, mooed the cow. I help man plow the earth, bellowed the ox. I carry man, neighed the horse, and I have the largest eyes of all of you. You have large eyes, but you only have two, while I have many, the housefly buzzed right in the horse's ear. Compared to me, you're all midgets. The giraffe's words came from a distance as he nibbled the leaves off the top of a tree. I'm almost as tall as you, chortled the camel, and I can travel in the desert for days without food or water. You too are tall, but I'm fat, snorted the hippopotamus, and I'm pretty sure my mouth is the biggest than anybody's. Don't be so sure, snapped the crocodile and yawned. I can speak like a human, squawked the parrot. You don't really speak, you just imitate, the rooster crowed. I know only one word, cock-a-doodle-doo, but it is my own word. I see with my ears, I fly by hearing, piped the bat. I sing with my wings, chirped the cricket. There were many more creatures who were eager to praise themselves, but Noah had noticed that the dove was perched alone on a branch and did not try to speak and compete with the other animals. Why are you silent? Noah asked the dove. Don't you have anything to boast about? I don't think of myself as better or wiser or more attractive than the other animals, cooed the dove. Each one of us has something the other doesn't have, given to us by God who created us all. The dove is right, Noah said. There is no need to boast and compete with one another. God has ordered me to take creatures of all kinds into the ark, cattle and beasts, bird and insect. The animals were overjoyed when they heard these words, and all of their grudges were forgotten. Before Noah opened the door of the ark, he said, I love all of you, but because the dove remained modest and silent, the rest of you bragged and argued. I choose it to be my messenger. Noah kept his word. When the rain stopped, he sent the dove to fly over the world and bring back news of how things were. At last she returned with an olive leaf in her beak, and Noah knew that the waters had receded. When the land finally became dry, Noah and his family and all the animals left the ark. After the flood, God promised that never again he would destroy the earth because of man's sins, and that seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night would never cease. The truth is, there are in the world more doves than there are tigers, leopards, wolves, vultures, and other ferocious beasts. The dove lives happily without fighting. It is the bird of peace. So there, a short one. Okay. This is a really good, I really like this one. It's called Zlate de Got. Okay. This is going to be another cliffhanger, folks. You remember that from back in the day? Well, I don't actually remember. I remember my parents and grandparents talking about, the serials where you would go to the theater once a week and there would be a show and there was always a cliffhanger so that make sure that you come back the next week. Yeah, so we do that, huh? Okay. Again, this one called Zlate de Got. At Hanukkah time, the road from the village to the town is usually covered with snow. But this year, the winter had been a mild one. Hanukkah had almost come, yet little snow had fallen. The sun shone most of the time. The peasants complained that because of the dry weather, there would be a poor harvest of winter grain. New grass sprouted, and the peasants sent their cattle out to pasture. For Reuben the furrier, it was a bad year, and after long hesitation, he decided to sell Zlote the goat. She was old and gave little milk. Fievel the town butcher had offered 8 gulden for her. Such a sum would buy Hanukkah candles, potatoes, and oil for pancakes, gifts for the children, and other holiday necessities for the house. Reuben told his oldest boy, Aaron, to take the goat to town. Aaron understood that taking the goat to Fievel meant, but had to obey his father. Leah, his mother, wiped the tears from her eyes when she heard the news. Aaron's sisters, Anna and Miriam, cried loudly. Aaron put his quilted jacket and a cap with earmuffs, bound a rope around Zlata's neck, and took along 2 slices of bread with cheese to eat on the road. Aaron was supposed to deliver the goat by evening, spend the night at the butcher's, and return the next day with the money. While the family said goodbye to the goat and Aaron placed a rope around her neck, Zlata stood as patiently and good-naturedly as ever. She licked Reuben's hand. She shook her small white beard. Zlata trusted the human beings. She knew they had always fed her and never did her any harm. When Aaron brought her out on the road to town, she seemed somewhat astonished. She'd never been in that direction before. She looked back at him questioningly, as if to say, "Where are you taking me?" But after a while, she seemed to come to the conclusion that a goat shouldn't ask questions. Still, the road was different. They passed new fields, pastures, and huts with thatched roofs. Here and there a dog barked and came running after them, but Aaron chased it away with a stick. The sun was shining when Aaron left the village. Suddenly, the weather changed. A large black cloud with a bluish center appeared in the east and spread itself rapidly over the sky. A cold wind blew in with it. The crows flew low, croaking. At first it looked as if it would rain, but instead it began to hail as in the summer. It was early in the day, but it became dark as dusk. After a while, the hail turned to snow. In his 12 years, Aaron had seen all kinds of weather, but he had never experienced a snow like this one. It was so dense it shut out the light of day. In a short time, their path was completely covered. The wind became cold as ice. The road to town was narrow and winding. Aaron no longer knew where he was. He could not see through the snow. The cold soon penetrated his quilted jacket. At first, Zlata didn't seem to mind the change in the weather. She, too, was 12 years old and knew what winter meant. But when her legs sank deeper and deeper into the snow, she began to turn her head and look at Aaron with wonderment. Her mild eyes seemed to ask, "Why are we out in such a storm?" Aaron hoped that a peasant would come along with a cart, but no one passed by. The snow grew thicker, falling to the ground. A large whirling flakes beneath it. Aaron's boots touched the softness of a plowed field. He realized that he was no longer on the road. He had gone astray. He could no longer figure out which was east or west, which way was the village, the town. The wind whistled, howled, whirled, and snow about in eddies. It looked as if white imps were playing tag in the field. A white dust rose above the ground. Zlota stopped. She could walk no longer. Stubbornly she anchored her cleft hooves in the earth and bleated as if pleading to be taken home. Icicles hung from her white beard, and her horns were glazed with frost. And that, my friends, is where we are going to stop for this evening. You will have to come back next week to find out what happens to Aaron and Zlota the goat. So, we should probably do the other camera. Yeah, let's do the other camera. Okay, so that's going to be the end of our stories for tonight. These are good stories. Yes, yeah, they are very good stories. We're very happy that we actually came upon this sefer of wonderful stories. So anyway, so we will be back next week. Don't forget that on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. is the in-depth Torah study with Rabbi A. And Friday at 8 p.m. is Kabbalat and Ma'ariv Shabbat service, and then Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. is Shacharit and Musaf. This Parsha Chaye Serah. And don't forget to be right back here next Monday. Yeah, next Monday for Zeyde Story Corner. Until then, everyone, Lahitraot.